Well, here we go again.
And we're back.
Episode 12, I believe this is going to be, because episode 10 and 11 haven't been recorded yet.
Yeah.
You've got your guest coming in for episode 10. We've got Chris Grant coming on, so we're going back to our roots today, aren't we?
We're going back to the first episode.
It's not about Jeremy Kyle, just to stress.
No.
But we are going back into a little bit of doing a tribute act to HNC journalism or something like that, right? It feels like we're on a course at the moment, but we've been doing a bit of research.
Yes.
On an unsolved mystery per se.
Well, yeah, on a killer who was never found.
Never identified.
That's the word. Never identified. Yeah. So Ryan, let them know.
So we're doing the Zodiac Killer case today, or shall we say, going over the Zodiac Killer case, because it's not something that's came to a conclusion as of today, right? So this was a killer from the 1960s,
around about that time,
going into the 70s, around that type of era. And the kind of unique thing about this is that, most time with these kind of murderers and stuff like that, it's kind of like they're just kind of following the trail that they're leaving behind in terms of their victims and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
Whereas this particular person was, taunting the authorities that were pursuing him. Well, yeah, not exactly like that. A bit more in depth. But just before we actually kind of crack into it, just to warn people, we're probably going to be talking about some, graphic kind of talk.
Yeah,
obviously it being.
It's going to it's not exactly the nicest topic to talk about.
No.
And obviously, we understand that there have been families and people really badly affected by this. And this is not a stab at any of them. This is just to talk about something crazy that happened.
For the purposes of documentary making, if you will.
Yeah. We're just here to share a bit of info that we found and we thought was interesting.
So, like we just said, the Zodiac Killer kind of was first identified. My phone's just going off there. We'll just put that away until I need it for my notes. But the 1960s through to the 70s. So the official stats at this moment in time are 5 confirmed victims. So this is
5 confirmed killed.
Yeah, 2 injured. So 2 that were injured but managed to survive.
Were lucky enough to survive.
But the authorities estimate that his actual number is between 28 and 28, and he himself, or the person that is the Zodiac Killer, claimed to have killed 34, but you've also written down 37, so 34 to 37.
So obviously, a bit of conflicting info there, but as we know, it's just it's the information that's free to us, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's unfortunately what it is. Obviously, as everyone knows, they can't actually say it was him. They just can link it to him. And obviously, with him claiming how many he's killed, I mean, do you believe it? Do you not?
It seems like quite what's the word I'm trying to? It's revert to type sometimes with killers. Whenever they're found, they always seem to claim
they've done
a really high number, and you don't know which way to go, right? Because it's something that happens so frequently. Mm-hmm. I mean, obviously this person hasn't been caught, so you could say that there's not that element of playing up to the camera, if you will.
Yeah, exactly, because he's never put on camera.
Yeah. But
yeah, so from that, like you said, with the 5 killed and the 2 wounded, that spree lasted from December 1968 up until October 1969. Now, I've only written a little bit of details about some of the victims, because the ones I wanted to focus on were the ones who survived.
Right, okay.
So on the July 4th, 1968, 2 victims, another couple, and as we know, the Zodiac Killer likes to
target young couples.
So we've seen these 2 couples, well, this couple at Blue Rock Spring Park in Vallejo.
This is in California, in America.
Yes. Yeah. So they were both shot. Now, unfortunately, Darlene E. Ferrin, that was the woman. Unfortunately, she died. She was actually pronounced dead, I believe, on the spot. That was instantly she had died. And luckily for Michael R. Magoo, who was 19 at the time, he was also obviously shot, but he was one of the ones who actually survived the attack. Now, so that's Michael who survived. So that's one of the wounded. Now, the other wounded is is another male, actually, funnily enough. So Brian C. Hartnell, aged 20, and Anne Shepherd, aged 22, were both stabbed on September the 27th, 1969, at Lake Berryessa in Napa County, America. So Brian survived 8 stab wounds to the back. Eight stab wounds to the back. He survived that. Anne died due to her injuries 2 days later in the hospital.
Right, so he didn't actually survive then?
Brian survived.
Oh, but
Anne is partner.
Oh, his partner, okay. I thought you
died.
said Brian and...
No, yeah. So, Brian and Anne were stabbed, right, okay. But Brian survived the 8 stab wounds to the back. Anne unfortunately died 2 days later in hospital due to her grievous injuries.
The intention really, like, sometimes when I've read these type of cases and other cases and that of notorious serial killers and that, they do tend to leave some people alive as... You know that kind of thing you see in like films and that, send a message and stuff like that. Leave
someone to tell their story.
Where this doesn't seem to be the case here. This just seems like really good fortune that he managed to pull through. He
actually managed to survive, yes. Because I mean, for that one, they were at a lake. It was, if I'm right, it's the middle of the day. It's not exactly
it's not
a private area. It's a public. It was a public area. It was a lake. So in my head, obviously we weren't there. We don't know.
Yeah.
My speculation on this is that this Zodiac Killer has been driving down by the lake and he's just seen a young couple and he's just thought, you're my next target.
Do you think it's like an impulse thing?
I do. In my head, I have that in my head. He's probably just drove and he's just seen someone and just went, you're going to be, that's it, you're the one. You're a young couple, you fit my profile, let's do this. And just
having like read a lot in books and that around serial killers, it does seem like
there's spontaneous can be a
exactly, but there seems to be like an addiction there to it as well. Yeah. Like once they kind of do it the first time, they get like a sense of euphoria from doing it, which is sick, right?
It's like a weird sense of power.
Yeah,
almost,
like you have to be sick to enjoy killing. Like there's no way around that. But we can't be naive to the fact that there's people out there that exist that do think this way.
And especially with that one, I mean, the rest of them, most of them seem to be gun crime. Like he's shot them, but that one, he stabbed them. That's quite a personal.
It's quite intimate, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a very, very close, very personal, very. I'm gonna make sure I do this the way I want to do it. And for 8 stab wounds, I mean, in my head, did he actually want to kill him straight away, or did he want to actually just hurt and torture the man? And just, I mean, the guy's obviously known in his head. I've stabbed him 8 times, probably in a lot of vital areas. He's probably gonna die. So I think that's one thing that obviously the Zodiac Killer let himself down with, essentially, because he didn't actually get that victim.
Yeah.
And it'd be the same for Michael. He was shot, but he managed to survive. Now, these people have done little parts of where they decided to speak to the media.
Which is very brave to do so, right?
Well, exactly.
Especially, like, if you're 19 or 20...
You don't want to be speaking to anyone about it.
Well, not just that, but, like, just coping in general. Like, your partner has been killed. You've been part of a vicious... attempted murder. I was about to say assault, but it's, obviously it's
attempted murder all the way, isn't
extreme.
But yeah, so Brian, so obviously, is it Brian? Brian Hartnell. Yeah, Brian Hartnell gave many interviews in the first year after the attack, but now he's actually no longer discussing the case with the news media.
Is there any particular reason behind that?
I have a feeling I couldn't find much information as to why he doesn't want to. All I could find is that he is just no longer discussing the case. So I have
Do you think he's maybe just tired about going on about it?
Well, being tired of reliving that moment.
Yeah, exactly, right. There's got to be a point of where, I mean, I don't want to sound like callous, but there's a point where you kind of have to try and move on with your life, right?
Exactly.
As hard as that's going to be, because...
Especially when you've got media outside your house.
Yeah.
You're caught in a supermarket and they're like, Mr. Hartnell, Mr. Hartnell. You would, by the end of it, you'd be like, leave me the fuck alone.
Yeah, like you're getting... you're getting like hounded really, and getting, like you said, kind of re-exposed to that moment
constantly,
and almost be like it kind of goes back to what we were talking about the other day about people being kind of desensitized to other people, right? But not from the social media side of things, but at the time more, this person's a story rather than this person's a person that's suffered a really horrifying event in their life. And
all they want to do is make money off his story.
Yeah.
And it's, I've never been able to fully understand how people the word is brave, how people can be so brave to go out and discuss a traumatic event like that.
Especially
fair play to me, done it in the first year.
Especially when the culprit is still at large. Like, it's not
exactly.
like they're in jail or whatever. There's been a conclusion to it. Like, the culprit was still active.
He could have been his neighbor.
Yeah.
He could have been like giving all these interviews, and his neighbor's like, "Oh,
Yeah, we're not accusing his neighbor.
I know, but that's the point.
We're using it as an example.
He's a man of mystery. But yeah, so obviously I tried to find out any information on Michael. Now, information on Michael was extremely difficult to find. I couldn't find anything about him for what he's up to now.
No.
The only little bit of information I did find, and I couldn't check it out too deeply, was he apparently changed his story upon giving an interview, and it wasn't like he changed it so it was upside down, like left was
not
right,
in
right
like
was left.
a suspicious way.
No, it was like little bits of details he had like edited and changed, and it caused uproar. People were like slating him, and once again, it goes back to the same situation as Brian. It's like he's been through such a traumatic event. I mean, he was shot. He watched his partner die from a gun wound. It's
like
just,
that as well, right? Like no warning, like
It's just like they're doing their own business. I mean, they were in a park. I'm guessing they might have been doing a wee bit of shopping. They might have been out for somewhere to eat, and
enjoying life from in your prime.
Exactly. And then,
well, I wouldn't say your prime because 20 is still young and everything, but
so I have a feeling Michael has basically just been like, I just don't want to talk about it. And to be fair, that's obviously from what I can take from it. That's not fact. It's just from what I could take from what I was trying to find and struggled to find, was that Michael just doesn't want to talk about it.
Right.
And in all fairness, I would relate more to Michael because I don't think I would want to talk about it.
No, not to like over and over again for what?
I'd maybe talk to it to a family member or someone close, but I wouldn't be talking to the media about it. It's not something I'd want to do.
I mean, if how long ago is this now? 53 years ago?
It's a long time ago.
So this person's in their 70s now.
They're both these survivors are actually both still alive and well.
Yeah.
They are both still alive and well.
But like they're at retirement age and that now, and probably don't want to have to relive stress. Relive something that literally happened half a century ago.
And we all know with age comes a bit of deterioration with memory. It just happens. So I mean, you wouldn't want to go up and try pressure an elderly person into give me every single defined detail about what happened to you so many years ago. That's almost like you're asking an impossible question of someone.
I suppose they're almost in like an impossible situation of where something totally out of their control, right? It was not anything, nothing.
They didn't cause this.
Yeah, exactly. Just a third party being the culprit did this horrible thing to them, which has inadvertently kind of not defined their life, but it kind of has in a way in the sense it changed his life.
They're always going to be
not just from the trauma of the attack, but like you said, from the media pressure and the scrutinization of, like you said, of like a small detail had changed in the story and whatnot. So because
it's the same with the public, because with that small change, a lot of people in the public were like, wait, so why is he? And it's that point where it's
we're very cynical on the outside, right? We want to.
But this wasn't even at the time. This was like a couple years after, as our technology grew and all of that. That's when all these changes started getting kind of released to the media as such, and it was I can't remember exactly. It's going to annoy me now, but it was a very, very minute detail. It didn't exactly pin him as a culprit.
Yeah,
it was just a minute detail that he may have slipped up. He may have been under too much pressure. He was, without a doubt, absolutely distraught.
Plus, like, your memory's not exactly going to be clear from some kind of...
A lot of people mentally block that.
Exactly. Like I was about to say, like, your mind rejects that kind of trauma. Especially,
it tries to protect you, doesn't it? That's what it does. So it can make you shell up and it can block off memories and things like that. So yeah, that was, like I say, that was just a basic little bit of information about the two wounded victims. Obviously, I had the two victims there that were killed, unfortunately, by him. But yeah, I just wanted to talk about some of the few little survivors that were actually about. But as another point now, from something which was so horrific, but it was so upscaled by the media. I mean, his crimes letters, his cryptograms to the police and newspapers inspired movies, novels, television, and more. Now, this is someone that, if anyone ever actually was to, it's not going to happen. But if we ever met the Zodiac Killer, you ain't going to sit there and shake his hand and ask him about his story, are you? No. You're going to phone the police, or you're going to do something about it yourself. Yeah. He's a horrible man, deserves everything. Well, we're guessing it's a horrible man, horrible person, who I wish every horrible thing in the world to happen to him. But yeah, I mean, for all of that, and all of a sudden we play it up, and we have people making money off of this,
Yeah.
Like, I just...
It's almost like we kind of... It's almost like the public and the media and that feed the ego of the culprit, right? Which doesn't mean that we're at fault for it, but at the same time, it's fueling the fire, so to speak.
Yeah, definitely.
Because this person clearly got off on power. I mean, most killers do, right? But in the sense of not just power over his victims, but power over media outlets, power over the public, right? Because people are scared, right? Like people are getting killed, and it's so well publicized. It is going to cause, a certain level of angst in the communities that were affected by this and whatnot. Definitely. But one thing I find, and here's another thing to relate to that: the name the Zodiac Killer. He named himself that. Because he, in some of the letters where he's basically taunting the people that are pursuing, investigating him, so on, he named himself the Zodiac Killer. And that is what we're calling him right now, right? That is what he's known as. So that's another example of how we, maybe in a way though, like sometimes that's a smart thing to do from the kind of authority side, right? Because you kind of want them to feel, people make mistakes when they're comfortable, right?
Oh, yeah.
So I guess maybe from the police's kind of thinking, they were like, if we get this dude comfortable, he's going to mess up and then we're going to, catch him. But like you were saying before we just came on air and whatnot, you were saying that he never, like all these messages, and obviously they had ciphers and cryptograms and that, which we'll get to, but he would never handwrite stuff. All his messages were... It was not like newspaper clippings to make words and collages and stuff like that to get his message across?
It was, yeah. So he was using a lot of newspaper clippings for obviously letters, certain words. He was gluing them down or sticking them down somehow. Obviously, there was no DNA ever lifted from any of it.
Yeah, and they couldn't like compare people's handwriting to it or that because that's been taken out of the equation. Yeah.
Yeah, and that, I mean, for someone who is quite clearly in that era, quite an intelligent person, although it's
used for bad reasons. Yeah.
He was quite an intelligent person. So I mean, making a crypto, like a code, I mean, I know some people like to play it as a game, like for instance, you want to play a game? So maybe it's a bit like the Zodiac Killer. That's the kind of thing I get from it. It's like just wanted to play a game. It's like if they could have actually cracked it back then, instead of the 340.
Well, some of them have just been recently cracked now, right?
December 15th last year was when the big 340 encryption was actually cracked. But yeah, I mean, imagine if that was cracked back in the day. I mean, if that was actually cracked back in the day, do you think he would have been like, right, okay?
Well, because even though it's been cracked now, there's still no kind of, it
was definitely him.
Yeah, like it's just kind of like, we cracked the puzzle.
Yeah, because when he was doing all these cryptograms, he didn't give an insight into his personality. He kind of gave more of an insight, a very, very little insight into some of his pop culture references. I mean, some of the stuff he was actually wording, it was linked to shows and movies and films that were actually about in that era.
Yeah.
And it was things like that where it was like, all right, so we know he likes, or we know he's watched a film containing that line. That gives you nothing.
No.
Gives you absolutely
because
nothing.
It's such a diverse range of people that are going to like those films and stuff like that together that it can't be narrowed down.
Because also, I mean, I'm going back to the one where nowadays, obviously the DNA sample comes from beneath a stamp stuck to one of his infamous letters. This is going on about trying to actually link it to him. Now, the sample developed in 2002 by San Francisco police is only a partial. The sample may not even be his. All they have is a little basic DNA sample. And it was like I was saying to you before we went live. It's fine having a DNA sample, but having nothing to compare it to is why you only end up with a partial.
Well, they used this technology to catch another notorious serial killer, the Golden State Killer, right? Yes, and the reason that he was caught was because he was a police officer. So they would have had his DNA on file anyway to,
And he left DNA on every crime scene. Yeah. Everywhere.
So
from what I read anyway. He wasn't a very careful person.
But that was only, solved, 3 years ago? Yeah. 4 years ago, something like that. And obviously, like, he was still alive at the time. He was like an elderly man. I believe he's in prison now. Although I can't be sure though. I would imagine he's in prison now. It's not like they're just going to go. He's
definitely not going to get away with time.
You've got away for it. You've got away with it for this long, so we might as well just pat you on the back and let you go. But to give people a bit of insight into some of the communications that he had with the authorities, referring to my notes here. I've got notes here and I've got notes digitally as well. So here's a quote. This is something that the police and the newspaper... Well, actually, he communicated to the police through the papers. He would send the letters to the papers, and then obviously the police would get a hold of it because they're the ones investigating, trying to track him down on that. So, and a quote, "I like killing people because it is so much fun. It is more fun than killing wild game in the forest," which suggests that this person might be a hunter, right? Because he's brought up bringing wild game, so that suggests that he's done that, and he's been able to compare the two experiences. Like he just said, it's more fun for him.
Hunting a smart animal, basically.
Because man is the most dangerous animal of all to kill. Something gives me the most thrilling experience. It is even better than getting your rocks off with... I'll leave this next part out. When I die, I will be reborn in paradise. And the thing is, like, this was actually mentioned when I was reading it. There's a lot of spelling mistakes here. But obviously it's from the cipher. The whole collage side. It's not like he's spelt it.
On his cipher, I did see a picture. There were actually two symbols used for two different letters as well. So there was one for A and there was one for S, apparently. I think it was just a black triangle. Yeah. Like a blacked out triangle. And that was also the same for A and S.
Paradise is spelt Paradice rather than SE. And all that I have killed will become my slaves. And like you were mentioning, his objective of killing people in his mind was to have slaves in the afterlife. I will not give you my name because you will try to slow down or atop my collecting of slaves for my afterlife. And then there's a cipher at the end, which I can't decipher because I'm not a
I'm not a code breaker.
I'm not a detective.
Well, like I say, I mean, it took 3 code breakers from this era to crack that.
Which is crazy, and because we're like we said, 53 years ago that this
we had people who deciphered the Nazi. What was it? Is it the Imitation Game with someone Cumberbatch in it?
Oh, Benedict Cumberbatch.
Yeah, and he designed a code breaking machine to actually decipher the Nazis during the Nazis' code during the war. He actually done that, That was way back then. Why was he not called?
And this was like that war had like really advanced militaries for the time.
Oh yeah.
And we're not too far removed from that in the sense of it was only 20 years on that this happened. And then the last line that he has is, "I hope you have lots of fun trying to catch me," which is again taunting and almost kind of.
Because the one I got was, "I hope you have a blast trying to catch."
Yeah,
me.
well, different,
same meaning.
Yeah,
very taunting. He's sticking to his. I reckon he created a persona for the Zodiac Killer, and that when he was in this persona, he knew what to say, how to say it, how to word things. Like, hope you have a blast trying to catch me, or have fun trying to catch me. He sticks with his taunting, doesn't he? But then I'm guessing in real life. What if this person wasn't anything like I say, they just create a persona for that person when he's doing his ciphers, when he was contacting or phoning people or making any kind of contact, he would put on the persona. Same thing where he would go out to do the deed, he would have, from what I gather, he was always with a hood up. Yeah. Always dark clothing, hood up, looking relatively sketchy. Maybe as soon as the hood goes up or whatnot, or as soon as he sees the target, he puts on the persona, Zodiac Killer, and then out comes this other side of the person, because obviously in real life there was so much information going on about this person. I mean, the description or the police sketch was very, very nondescript. It was everyone's real estate agent, everyone's dad, everyone's family member. It got to the point of
it was very generic.
Sketch. It was very, very generic, and it was useless. It was deemed useless. It just matched everyone. For that era, they had the big glasses, they had the short hair, and it was a white male, and back then, that was the style. That was the style that people dressed as. They had the big glasses. They had the groomed hair. Everyone looked the same. It's not like it is nowadays where we have such diversity, and not just with ethnicity, but we have it with day-to-day clothing and our own likes. Like, everyone's different now. We're not all like we were back then where we all followed the same suit. We just listened to what we were told and so on and so forth. But I really do believe that the Zodiac Killer kind of just had this persona that he would just switch on and off. Because obviously when he was not doing the deed or not writing stuff to the police or the media, He was obviously living his own life, but so much so that no one even noticed him.
Yeah. And I think when you bring up like persona and stuff like that, do you think it was almost like a pre-internet world way of hiding behind a screen almost? You know how when we like having that confidence of being able to say stuff
I get what you mean.
without
actually,
people knowing your true identity, right? Because like you said, this person had more or less created a persona for his ego that...
That's my opinion, though.
Yeah. Yeah, no, but I think there's like a good relative kind of thing to apply it to here, because we were talking about the other day on the social media episode about people saying stuff and not having the consequences to it and being more confident. Obviously, this is like a next level type stuff, but I think the same kind of precedent applies, right? Like, because they didn't know who he was, he felt like he could say all of this and that, and he felt superior to them, right? Because they could never, you know, make any breakthroughs or exactly. And whatever he would say in these messages and the ciphers and cryptograms, it was all over the media, papers. Obviously, that was really, you know, television, I suppose, at that time as well.
Yeah.
So I think that would probably fuel his ego and lust for power, right?
Oh, definitely.
So yeah, let's talk about the ciphers and the cryptograms a little bit more, because this is the most unique thing, right? Like, even though there has been people that have wrote to the authorities as killers before, whether they've been caught or not, this was a very unique scenario of, like we said, about the collages over the handwriting. Like, this person really held their... I know it's kind of ironic saying it now after what we were just talking about, but this person held their cards really close to their chest when it came to the communication with...
He was smart. He was definitely an intelligent person. I mean, he just didn't slip up. The one time he almost slipped up was on the last, as they state, recorded murder, I'd imagine. After his close call when he killed the taxi driver, he was seen by 3 teenagers, and he actually narrowly escaped an actual policeman.
Yeah, I think that, I did hear something about that he might have been talking to one or something.
And it was just crazy. But that was the last proper one they managed to link to him. But although they claimed that the murders and crimes stopped, the letters didn't stop. Yeah. The letters actually continued after that crime.
Yeah, well, I get what you're saying. When he stopped the killing spree, his communication kept on going, even though he wasn't necessarily committing more.
Exactly. But this is where I was going with, where I just think it was like you were going with. He just felt he had all this attention, all this fame, and he wasn't willing to let it go. And I think where we were talking about the persona, I think that side of his persona was like, I am the Zodiac. Why would I stop?
Do you think because he had this new kind of avenue of, you know, the taunting and being this mysterious figure, and do you think that became more euphoric for him than the actual killing itself that he states?
I think he enjoyed playing the part of the Zodiac Killer more than his day-to-day life. Yeah. This is why I think he actually struggled with who he may have been. And then obviously when they discovered what they were getting out of doing these horrific crimes, I think that's when they were like, right, well, I've got me, but then I've got my other persona, Zodiac Killer, and I like being the Zodiac Killer.
I suppose trying to think it
strong, determined, didn't take crap, done their own thing, done what they wanted. A lot of people actually wish they had that kind of freedom, you know? Yeah. So although it's portrayed in such a bad way. Yeah. Like I say, for my thought on someone having it, like, could have been just a split personality. It could have been a mental health issue. You know, things like that you just don't know about. But
it would have to be right in the sense of you can't be a cognitive, healthy thinking person doing what this person was doing, regardless of the intelligence and all that behind it anyway. But I think what I was trying to say is, like, he was saying early on in these letters, like I read a couple minutes ago, about how it would move from hunting wild game to hunting people. Yeah. But that's like all a power thing again, right? Because there's a bit of power in hunting animals, and then there's more probably power for him in his mind, or
if you're the hunter, you want prey.
Exactly. So, but now he was almost like he enjoyed the power of not actually going through with things, but making people think he would.
Like telling a story almost.
Yeah, well, not just that, but having people on strings is what I mean. Like, when he would, because he would threaten the media that if they didn't release his letters, he would then go on another killing spree, or he would do some kind of bombing or something I was reading, and then that would force them, which is even more power to an extent, right? Because you're making people make all these hard choices and stuff like that by what you're telling them, because you've got that much power that they're scared of what you're going to do if they don't do it, right?
Well, exactly, yeah. Yeah, I mean, your back's right up against the wall, essentially, isn't it? It's like, do we do what he does or do we not? But I mean, if we don't, if we don't do,
we don't do what he does. That's for sure.
If we don't do what he says, then for all we know, he could be one of the people in here.
Yeah,
you know, I mean, imagine that thought always in your head. You could, like as you said with this Golden State Killer. I mean, he was an actual policeman. We're not saying there's.
That's what they always say in like these documentaries about killers and that. I think when you don't know who it is, you have a picture of that type of person in your head, but it's nothing what the actual reality is. The most scary thing about these type of killers is that they just live among us, right?
Yeah, they're unpredictable. And you are right. It once again goes back to my thought on personas. They know how to act when they're not in that persona. Like, they know how to be a normal human being, nice, respectful, and to go under the radar, to not be noticed by anyone. And then, as we all know, what happens behind closed doors is no one's got a clue. Yeah. No one knows. As soon as that door closed, ZK back on the scene. I'ma write some cryptos. I'ma write some cryptos.
You know, when we talk about him, like having this amount of power, it's crazy how much he did gain in the time. Like we said, like we were just saying about the hunting but then when it got to the papers, like I'm pretty sure there was like a journalist that was looking into his case or something, and he had actually gained his number allegedly. Like, obviously we'll talk about copycats and people that were imposters and that, you know, going forward, but for who he'd allegedly phoned. And just even letting him know that he had his number, you knew what house he was in, obviously, because of the number. That was enough to terrify people, right?
Yeah.
And that's the power thing coming into force again, of where he had power when he didn't actually even have to do anything, because of the reputation he built for himself from not just the killings themselves, but from the communication and the kind of taunting and superiority complex that he had over the authorities and the media and so on.
Yeah, it is actually crazy. You are totally right. I don't really know what to say to that. Actually, yeah, it's one of those situations where it's like, yeah, he had all the cards.
What are you thinking if you're the authorities in this situation? Because you're literally powerless, because there's so many people that could fit the bill in terms of what he's revealed in very short snippets about himself.
Yeah.
Obviously, you when stuff like this happens, they kind of go through people that have got stuff like schizophrenia and all that would maybe, you know, make them do something like this.
Yeah.
But other than that, there's not too much to go on, because
they didn't leave.
There was no tracks to follow. Yeah, so it was literally like they were, and this is even the more crazier thing. The whole investigation was centered around now waiting for the next letter, right? To try and be like, oh, we'll have better luck with this one because we can't decipher the last one and so on. And it was literally like a wild goose chase.
I think, yeah, with that, it's obviously the Zodiac Killer was enjoying this so-called chase. But from hearing all that as well, does it not make you think that he may have been a lot more local than what people may have assumed?
Well, they do have suspicions that he might have been operating in Nevada as well as California for a bit, but that is obviously speculation. Yeah. But
it makes you think. I mean, if he's got all these, I know it wasn't too difficult to get in contact with your local printing, your local newspaper printing. Like that's never been that difficult to do. You know, because that's what newspapers want. They want people to contact them with stories and so on and so forth. Well, but I mean, for the police to be getting it a lot, and it did seem to be centered around certain areas more than others. Like, I don't know. I mean, you can't even put out like an APB or put out a search warrant. Don't know what it looks like, or he or she looks like. They can't be 100% certain.
And like you said, the descriptions that they were given to use to make.
Well, that was why he was never caught. I mean, the 4 basic reasons as to why he was never caught was no clear-cut DNA, a useless police sketch, the letters provided too much and too little info, but nothing personal.
Yeah, like that's the one word you would use to describe the letters, obviously aside from the cryptograms and the ciphers. It's cryptic, right?
Exactly. And then the last one I got was the Zodiac knew when to stop. In that instance, when he was almost caught by the 3 teens and that police officer, that's when I said the alleged crime stopped, but the letters did not.
He adapted, right? He evolved.
I think he realized I almost screwed up. I almost lost.
Which almost kind of shows that there was a fear of being caught. But then at the same time,
I think it's a fear of losing. It wasn't
he was winning. That's a great point. Like, he was winning against the authorities, and he probably
he was winning against the country. It wasn't just that. It was because they had people involved. They were getting the public involved all the time, weren't they?
I would imagine that accentuates his narcissism in the sense of, like,
I'm better than all of you. Oh yeah, which is exactly what it did. It came across. I mean, he came across quite pompous. He came across as a bit of a religious nut, with using his symbols,
which seems to be quite a common thing when we could talk about this. A lot of people
feel like they become entitled, empowered, and it's like,
they believe that they're a higher power.
Yeah, it's unfortunately you can believe what you want, but facts are facts. You're not.
No.
You're not. You were just a person with in my thoughts, with a dodgy persona who couldn't feed the appetite of it. Basically, he just needed to keep on doing what he was doing.
But so anyway, the case went on for years, and with literally no success in any way, shape, or form. And it got made inactive in 2004. So how that's like what? Coming up to 40 years, nearly after it first started, and then in 2007 it was reopened. Now I made a bit of I didn't make a claim, but I just made a thought. 2007 was the year that the film came out, right? Because there was a very.
This is quite. It's weird. It's good though. I like it. I like the idea.
It was a very famous film with Jake Gyllenhaal and the guy that plays the Hulk. Who am I thinking of here?
No, you're not about the South African gent. Eric Bana.
No, he doesn't play Hulk, does he?
Are you on about Mark Ruffalo?
Yeah.
Oh, there we go.
Ruffalo. Is it not Mark Ruffalo, I think?
Oh, it's something like that. I'm saying
man. Another t-shirt is going to be made. God damn it.
I actually like that actor, though. He's a good actor.
We mean no offense here.
Yeah. I like you.
John just gets confused sometimes. But like, that was a really popular film. And obviously, it had done its research on the case and that, and portrayed it in a way that, was mostly accurate from the information that they could gather. And a lot of people kind of gravitated towards the film because it was quite a successful one. So I wonder if that, didn't inspire, but like, I wonder if that kind of, almost got the authorities thinking about it again. Like, no, we actually have to solve this, because obviously at the time. Well, not at the time, still is the case to this day, but they were saying at the end of the film, like, it had been solved, the person had been found, and they had a suspect that died that they thought it was, but we'll get to that later on. Because he did stop, the Zodiac Killer did stop even the communication, right? I believe the last letter was 1974. The last official letter was 1974. There was a few after that, but were deemed to have not have came from the killer, because there was inconsistencies with the motto that they were using previously. And obviously that kind of brings us to the topic of...
Because this guy was particular. He wouldn't make a little mistake like that, because he seen himself as too much of an intelligent person.
Like, he was... They were that unique that it was hard...
It's too hard to replicate.
Yeah, it was hard to replicate, right? It was a very, very...
it's like a little niche.
Yeah, very specific kind of like not writing, but communication that they draw.
Yeah, he had a certain format that he followed, and he followed it religiously. Hence why everyone knew when they had a Zodiac Killer letter. Everyone knew it. And if someone turns around and says this one's different, you would just be like, it's a copycat.
So I think that kind of brings us on to the topic of how people can kind of be in awe of these type of people, because like I've got noted down here, after the last official letter in 1974, there were people that were writing imposter letters to the authorities in the papers, and obviously like they get reviewed and stuff like that, because you have to take it seriously.
It's still evidence, evidence.
It'd be a big story every couple of years, like, oh, the killer's back, when heard, and it was almost like the person, as much as it sounds ridiculous me saying this, it was almost like the Zodiac Killer gained more power from staying silent now because they didn't know what the killer was thinking now.
Well, there is a saying, isn't there? Sometimes, like, the most powerful thing to say is nothing.
Yeah, yeah.
Or, like, actions speak louder than words and things. There's a lot of sayings to go along with that kind of thing. So, to me, it just goes back to the guy's an intelligent guy. I think he knew when to stop. He knew when to stop talking. He knew when to stop sending letters. He knew when to stop committing the crimes. I don't think he's shut. I don't think he knew when to shut off. That persona.
Very strong manipulator, right?
Oh yeah.
Very good at timing of getting people's anxiety raised through the roof because obviously he still hadn't been caught.
Maybe that was why he done the things he done. Maybe it was he wanted to ruffle that many feathers, get people running around, anxiety attacks everywhere, just so they were missing something.
There's that quote out of The Dark Knight, right? Some people just want to watch the world burn. When it refers to the Joker, and maybe it could be relevant in this case here, even though one's fiction and one's
not. But yeah, no, I agree with that. Actually, some people do get a kick out of just watching people's misery, and it doesn't have to be due to like a horrific crime. It can be just due to someone driving you mental. It made you miserable. I mean, imagine the police force. That the chief of police would have been getting it on. Down his. They would have been ripping his throat out, basically. Like, why haven't you caught him? Why haven't you done this? Why haven't you done that? Imagine that guy's life every day. What are you doing? What are you doing? What have you done? What are you doing?
I mean, like, even stuff like the mayors and stuff like that, right? Because they're in charge of the city. This person's wreaking havoc in the city. If it's not through physical acts of killing, it'll be the angst that they're causing with the kind of threats and the manipulation and all that. There is a potential case that he tried to do in 1970, I believe. I've got it noted down here. And the reason that this got related, actually, we'll make a quick note before I'll hold that thought for a second. We'll make a quick note of he had claimed, but someone to talk about imposters and that had phoned up a TV show claiming to be the Zodiac Killer, right? Which everyone thought was a massive breakthrough. And in that, the imposter killer said that they didn't want to reveal their name in that because they were scared of the gas chamber, because obviously this person would have been most likely sentenced to death row when Sam Quentin and all those big, where they have the death penalty and that. But then they retorted to that via a message of, "That wasn't me on the TV show, which brings up a point about me. I am not afraid of the gas chamber because it will send me to paradise all the sooner. Because I now have enough slaves to work for me." So in a way, he's almost suggesting there that he's satisfied with how many people
what he's achieved.
He's exactly, which is really, really strange. Because we were talking about the mindset of a killer in general to start with, and it doesn't seem like something that can be stopped once the hamster's
it's an
running.
Addiction.
Exactly.
An addiction, you don't just all of a sudden be like, "Oh, I'm too full of addiction. I don't need any more."
But this person seems almost weirdly controlled in the sense of, okay, I've done what I set out to do.
Yeah.
And now I'm going to, which is really, really, obviously, it was good for the communities because he never killed any more people, but it's just bizarre.
It comes across as it's not quite like him, though, doesn't it?
So out of left field. Because that's how usually killers get caught, right? They keep going, and eventually something happens to where they, or there's a massive breakthrough, or something clicks with the police that can connect it, or something. But this person managed to put his foot on the brake and stop and find another way to fuel his ego and narcissism and that we were talking about earlier. But I just thought that was a really interesting point.
That's a crazy point. Yeah, that's a good one, Ryan.
Where everyone else has nothing when they reach paradise, so they are afraid of death. I am not afraid because I know that my new life is... This one doesn't really make sense. There's maybe another cipher here. Hold tight. Life will be an easy one in paradise death. So in a way, he's kind of exhibiting his power again over people in the sense of, you fear death. I don't.
Because I think that actual letter comes from the 340 encryption, doesn't it? Yeah, so that was the big one. That was solved last year, December. Apparently. We don't know if it is legit. I mean, without having the criminal to say that is legit what I said.
I mean, if we were just to guess on a whim would probably say that's...
It's round about the same kind of lines. It comes across as, from what we've discussed, him wanting to taunt people.
The language is very, very...
Come at me.
Yeah. No. Well, yeah, but similar to what
he was
the,
the persona. Carry on. Sorry, yeah.
So, yeah, right. To get back to what I was saying originally, I just seen that in my notes and I was like, I can't leave that out. So, there was an incident with a lady called Kathleen Johns, my bad. On the night of March 22nd, 1970, Kathleen Johns was driving from San Francisco to Petaluma, sorry if I've butchered that name, to visit her mother. She was 7 months pregnant and had her 10-month-old daughter beside her. While heading west on Highway 132 near Modesto, a car behind her began honking its horn and flashing its headlights. She pulled off the road and stopped. The man in the car, parked behind her, approached her car, stated that he observed that her right rear wheel was wobbling, and offered to tighten the lug nuts. After finishing his work, the man drove off. Yet when Johns pulled forward to re-enter the highway, the wheel almost immediately came off the car, which it would suggest tampering, right? That there was nothing wrong with the wheel, and they've purposely done that so that the wheel does come off.
Yeah.
The man returned, offering the driver to the nearest gas station for help. She and her daughter climbed into his car. During the ride, the car passed several service stations, but the man did not stop, which at this point, red alarm bells start going, right? You're getting into a stranger's car.
That poor woman's probably gripping at her daughter.
They've took you past the destination that's in. Yeah, anyway, for about 90 minutes, which is a long period of time, especially in a situation like that, I would imagine.
When you're heavily pregnant and with an infant with you.
And, potentially realising that you've just been kidnapped. No, realising you've just been kidnapped. No potential about it. He drove back and forth around the back roads near Tracy, which I imagine that's another area of California or something like that. When Johns asked why he was not stopping, he would change the subject. So that's again, like, it's almost like not even acknowledging the alarm, right? This person's very cold. I mean, obviously, if it is the same person, because this is an alleged incident that was linked. When the driver finally stopped at intersections, Johns jumped out with her daughter and hid in a field. It was a very brave thing to do. Like, 7 months pregnant, like, like.
Hey, that's mothering instinct, man. Never get in between a mother and a child.
No, but like, don't they say like not to
do anything stressful?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. The driver searched for her using a flashlight, telling her that he would not hurt her, before eventually giving up. I suppose, like, when someone's going to hurt you, the first thing they're going to say is, I'm not going to hurt you, right?
Yeah.
And unable to find her, he got back into the car and drove off. Johns hitched a ride to the police station in Patterson. When Johns gave her statement to the sergeant on duty, she noticed the police composite sketch of Paul Stein's killer, which I would imagine is another one of the Zodiac victims, and recognized him as the man who had abducted her and her child. Fearing that he might return to kill them all, the sergeant had Johns wait in the dark at nearby Mills restaurant. When her car was found, it had been gutted and torched. So this would suggest that this person, we can't say for definite, but it's very, very simple. Like we're saying, they're thinking ahead, right? This person's consciously went back to the car that started the whole journey off and then led to her getting out and into his car and whatnot. And
I think it sounds a bit too planned from the other ones.
Yeah, but like we were saying, this person was...
He's clever and he's meticulous, yeah.
This person was always evolving, right? Mm-hmm. So if he can evolve with not doing the killings and doing stuff differently why can he not evolve his tactics to actually...
That is very true. But then it comes to the point of, is he happy for that persona to change?
So most accounts say that the man threatened to kill Johns and her daughter whilst driving them around, but at least one police report disputes that. John's account to Paul Avery of the Chronicle indicates that her abductor left his car and searched for her in the dark with a flashlight. However, in one report she made to the police, she stated that he did not leave the vehicle. So it's kind of a blurring of a lines again with the story, right?
But then again, you've also got to think of the stress that woman would have been under in that state with her child or unborn child. There's a lot of things that people
you don't think
forget, or
you're not meant to think straight.
They don't, or don't word it properly. Even though the police want you in there pretty much ASAP to tell, because apparently it's still fresh in your head. I'm sorry. Sometimes people actually just want to be left alone for a couple of days to process what has happened. Sitting there, tell me what happened. Tell me what. They're going to make a mistake because the
police always seem to look at it practically rather than psychologically, right?
Yeah, and it's unfortunate, but I mean, I suppose nowadays that's why psychology plays a big part. You know, it's a big part in medical. It's a big part in investigations. Like you say, is this person got any medical issues we need to be aware of that can lead us to believe why they've done this, why they've acted like that? But back then,
there wasn't
available.
Yeah,
that's crazy. But yeah, that one's mad. I would trying to put yourself in that position of a woman who's alone with an unborn child and her infant driving, and then just to be thought of, oh, someone's going to give me a hand because there's something wrong with my car.
Yeah.
And then to be like, why aren't you stopping at a service station? Totally ignoring what you say. I'm surprised the woman waited until the car stopped. I get why she did. I fully understand why. But, I mean, obviously, if I was that, I wouldn't have been, I'm not a woman. I would have been a male. I wouldn't have had a child. I would have been out of that car. I would have jumped out of it. I don't care if he was going 40 mile an hour or what. I would have just been out of that car.
I suppose the amount of adrenaline that would be running through your body. I
probably wouldn't have felt it until I probably tried to take a couple steps and felt bones crumple.
Because at that point, there's just an immediate objective in your mind, and it's to survive, right?
It's fight or flight, yeah. So, I mean, in that situation where you don't know what that person is carrying, you're just going to run away, aren't you?
Yeah,
so
especially when you I mean, the alarming situation enough of this person's got sinister intentions is probably,
And in all fairness, obviously I'm not a female, so I can't put myself in a mother's shoes, but from what I gather, a mum will do anything for a child, so I can imagine the biggest worry in her head wasn't even for her. It would have been for the unborn and for her infant child.
Daughter next to her,
her health, 100%. She probably threw that out the bloody window. She would have just been like, nah, my offspring are the most important part of this. So if they can survive, she's...
But fortunately,
they all survived. They all survived, which is, yes, a very, very good thing, because... what a horrific night that would have been.
Yeah, and I think it's weird as well to think that, like we said, there's so many unknowns about this, and we don't know whether it's unknown because there's so many elements in play, or because this person's consciously, as in the killer I'm talking about again now, is putting stuff out there because they know that they can say anything that's going to be believed, and then that throws everything into...
It's like I say,
chaos again.
You'd be very surprised at how meticulous and clever and sneaky people can be. Some people you wouldn't even know it. I mean, we see it with politicians all the time. You think they're a good person, and all of a sudden you find out they've done this, and that, and you're like, wow, okay, okay, well, you can't get away with it because you're high with the media. Like they are on you all the time. That's why you get caught. But everyday people, we go under the radar. The only time we get caught is if we do something like a crime where we are actually caught. This Zodiac Killer was... He seemed to be so clever on where and who he attacked. Yeah, the places might have been public, but there's got to be something in place, I believe, that he would have been like, right, this is quiet, or there's something else happening in the town, or there's some kind of event I can get away with doing stuff unnoticed and stuff like that. I mean, the guy's obviously, I reckon he's really has planned. I mean, I know when I spoke about the lake, it might have been a spur of the moment kind of thing, but that would have been spur of the moment, probably driving past, seeing two people by themselves at a lakeside. Oh, wow, okay, that's a hard opportunity for someone with a persona like that to pass up.
Like you have to do kind of feel for the authorities in this situation, because even talking about it now, we can't. We can't nail down like
why
a certain profile because it changes all the time. But there's also a kind of consistency, and when it's the killer and when it's not.
Yeah, that's why when you told us a story about John's, I'm a little bit like, he seems to, from his previous attacks, it was all, he's going in there, he's doing the job, and then he's getting out. This one he either totally stepped his game up, or he was just...
Yeah, and this is not a confirmed Zodiac case. It is, like the story had said, she'd seen
a useless sketch.
Exactly.
Unfortunately.
Exactly, right. So
a very generic sketch.
Obviously, it's still a bad thing that happened to her, and that whether it's the Zodiac Killer or it wasn't related at all.
She should never. That should never happen to her. That should never happen to any of these people. You know, it's just unfortunate that this.
So
world
let's
has
talk
them.
about, because although they could when I say they could never locate a suspect, what I mean by that is they could never properly have someone in the frame. They had loads of people that they thought could be. But it could be not an extent of, we can bring them in. We can
link them to this like that.
Yeah, exactly. So
there was no evidence.
I'm not going to name these people because a lot of them are probably, public speculation. So no, you know what? It's public information. So we'll name them. So a couple that come out was Ross Sullivan was a person of interest through the possible link between the Zodiac Killer and the murder of Cherry Jo Bates in Riverside, which is another victim of the Zodiac Killer. Sullivan was a library assistant at Riverside City College and was suspected by co-workers who said that he went missing for several days after the murder. Sullivan resembles sketches of the Zodiac, but bearing in mind that we were saying it's very generic in that, so a lot of people and wore military-style boots with footprints like those found at the lake Berryessa, is that the one that you brought up? Yeah. Crime scene. Sullivan was hospitalized multiple times for bipolar disorder and schizophrenia, like we were saying earlier. Schizophrenia is something they always seem to...
that kind of links a little. I can see why they had him as a suspect. I would probably agree with that, actually, yeah. But then again, it's all
circumstantial at this point, yeah. Lawrence K., later Lawrence Kane. I don't know why they decided to change a letter in their name, but okay. Kathleen Johns, who claimed to have been abducted by the Zodiac Killer, picked out Lawrence Kane in a photo lineup. Patrol officer Don Folk, who possibly observed the Zodiac Killer following the murder of
taxi driver
Paul Stein, said that Kane closely resembled the man he and Eric Zelms encountered. Kane worked at the same Nevada hotel as possible Zodiac victim Donna Lass. Kane was diagnosed with impulse control disorder after suffering brain injuries in a 1962 accident. He was arrested for voyeurism and prowling. Police informants accused Richard Marshall of being the Zodiac Killer, claiming that he privately hinted at being a murderer. But then again, though, you do have to think, like, you know, small-time criminals and that are going to claim... You hear stories like that all the time. Yeah.
We unfortunately know people, not for anything bad, but, you know, it's, I got myself a new car with a model 2 times up from yours, and you're like, bugger off.
No, but exactly, right? Like, people... do big themselves up in
it's technically I'm not saying
it's impossible that this person couldn't have been the
but to shout out about it, it's a bit like it
doesn't fit the MO, does it? So Marshall lived in Riverside in 1966 and San Francisco in 1969, close to the scenes of the Bates and Stein murders. He was a silent film enthusiast, which I guess maybe links to the whole pop culture things you were bringing up. And projectionist screening Segundo de Chumon's The Red Phantom, 1907, which takes as a silent film, a name used by the author of a possible 1974 Zodiac letter, Detective Ken Narlow, said that Marshall makes good reading, but is not a very good suspect in my estimation. Ted Kaczynski, also known as the Unabomber, was investigated for possible connections to the Zodiac Killer in 1996. So this is 20 years down the line after these things had happened, or nearly 30 actually.
Crazy.
Kaczynski worked in Northern California at the time of the Zodiac murders, and like the Zodiac, had an interest in cryptography and threatened the press into publishing its communications. But then again, I think this dude did it more publicly without covering the tracks. So why would you do the same thing without applying the same methods to it? But I can see where they're going once again with this. Kaczynski was ruled out by both the FBI and
he's not meticulous enough.
SFPD based San Francisco Police Department. I was wondering what that stood for a second.
Wait until you get to the fire department when you're like, what?
on fingerprint and handwriting comparison, and by his absence from California on certain dates of the known Zodiac activities. Bruce Davis, a member of Charles Manson's family cult. No, he was a member of Charles Manson's Manson family cult. So it was one of his followers, disciples, cultists. Yeah, a convicted murderer was investigated, but no evidence linking him to the Zodiac murders was discovered. The Zodiac seems like he likes to be the boss of things, right? So you couldn't imagine him being part of a cult idolizing another
No, because this was all about him and his beliefs. It wasn't about Charles Manson's belief. It was about his belief of basically gathering slaves to worship him in the afterlife.
But I suppose it kind of fits with the whole religious cult type. I'm just trying to view it from their point of view of why they would
Maybe Manson got his ideas from him.
Well, yeah.
You know, I mean, it was done that well, and everyone knows, especially in these kind of eras, when you start making satanic markings everywhere, people get really, really freaked out, and the devil starts getting used a lot.
I've actually got a book on Charles Manson. Something to do with the CIA might have potentially been involved with him in some kind of experiment thing. We might have to talk about that at some point. I watched a podcast on the author. Did a Joe Rogan episode a couple of years ago. And,
John Rogan.
And trained by day, podcast by night, all day. But please don't copyright us, Joe. We're still a little podcast. But a 1970 report by the California Bureau of Criminal Identification Investigation stated that all male members of the Manson family had been investigated and eliminated as Zodiac suspects. So again, another dead end, it would appear. Yeah. In 2007, Dennis Kaufman claimed that his stepfather, Jack Torrance, was the Zodiac, which is kind of like, why would you be telling your stepson, like, I can't help you with your homework right now. I've got to go plan a crypto. I've got to go taunt the police department and the FBI. Kaufman turned several items over to the FBI, including a hood similar to the one worn by the Zodiac. But yeah, again, that's very frivolous. You need more than just a similar looking hoodie.
To say, especially in that, once we were talking about eras, if you're living in that town in that era, everyone went to the same clothes shop. There might have been 2 or 3, but everyone went to the same clothes shop. So you can guarantee at least more than 5 people probably had the same clothes as you did.
According to news sources, DNA analysis conducted by the FBI on the items was deemed inconclusive in 2010. In 2009, former lawyer Robert Tarbox, who was disbarred in August 1975 by the time, does that mean that he was...
disbarred? So he was taken out of the criminal justice system.
Yeah, that's what I would view it as. But anyway, could be wrong there, but anyway... California Supreme Court for failure to pay some claimants. Okay, so yeah, this is what it means. I should have kept reading and then we would have got our answer. Said that in the early 1970s, a merchant mariner walked into his office and confessed to him that he was the Zodiac Killer. Yet again, he just, like, this person's not just going to toy with the police and the authorities and then walk up to some lawyer
and be like, oh yeah, by the way, I'm this guy. Yeah,
the seemingly lucid seaman whose name Tarbox would not reveal based on confidentiality. Like,
but
I think, well, I suppose,
client confidentiality, yeah.
Described his crimes briefly but persuasively enough to convince Tarbox. How can you be brief but convincing at the same time?
No specific details, times, dates, areas, people's names. Although it probably would have all been on public record because it would have been printed in newspapers and whatnot. Still, people do, as you know, I mean, the Zodiac Killer, he'd done a lot of research into crypto, Satanism, well, yeah, all of it.
Yeah, all the bad things. The man said he was trying to stop himself from his opportunistic, which brings up your kind of thought process of seeing people and going, oh, you're getting taken out, you know?
Yeah.
Murder spree, but never returned to see Tarbox again. Tarbox took out a full-page ad in the Vallejo Times-Herald that he claimed would clear the name of Arthur Lee Allen, who we will touch on in a bit, as a killer. His only reason for revealing the story 30 years after the fact. Robert Graysmith, the author of several books on the Zodiac, said Tarbox's story was entirely plausible. So this seems like this one's got the most substance to it so far, but still I think it's very...
As we've discussed, the guy's too meticulous, he's too proud, he's too happy on what he's achieved to just go in and be like...
But then again, though, like you're saying, if it's a personality disorder, he's maybe not in that persona at the time.
But if he's not in that persona at the time, I don't think he would go in and say he was a Zodiac Killer.
No, true. In 2009, an episode of the History Channel television series Mystery Quest looked at newspaper editor Richard Gaikowski. During the time of the murders, Gaikowski worked for Good Times, a San Francisco counterculture newspaper. His appearance resembled the composite sketch and Nancy Slover, which you were saying with the people, the journalists and that, one of the reasons to be scared it could be one of us. So this is kind of what this suspect is at the moment. The Vallejo police dispatcher, who was contacted by the Zodiac shortly after the Blue Rock Springs attack, identified a recording of Kukowski's voice as being the same as the Zodiac's. Retired police detective Steve Hoddle argues in his book, The Black Dahlia Avenger, that his father, George Hoddle, was the Black Dahlia killer, whose victims included Elizabeth Short. That was the killer that I was saying that was quite similar to the Zodiac. Not in the methods, but they were trying to find the Dahlia for years. I don't think it ever got solved. The book led to the release of previously suppressed files and wire recordings by the Los Angeles District Attorney's Office of his father, which showed that the elder Hoddle had indeed been a prime suspect in Short's murder. DA Steve Kay subsequently wrote a letter which is published in his revised edition stating that if George Hoddle were still alive, he would be prosecuted for the crimes. So this person's obviously deceased now. In a follow-up book, Hoddle argued a circumstantial case that his father was also the Zodiac Killer based upon a police sketch. Yeah, again, the police sketch wasn't exactly reliable. The similarity of the style of the Zodiac letters to the Black Dahlia Avenger letters and questioned document examination. On February 19th, 2011, America's Most Wanted featured a story about the Zodiac Killer. In 2010, a picture surfaced of known Zodiac victim Darlene Ferrin and an unknown man who closely resembles the composite sketch. Yet again, we're referring to the police
woman
sketch.
who died from the stab wounds.
A former based on eyewitnesses' descriptions of the Zodiac Killer. Police believe the photo was taken in San Francisco in the middle of 1966 or 67, which would suggest that if that was authentic, then Darlene Ferrin knew the killer before she died, if that picture was taken in 1966 or 1967, because the murder actually happened in 1968, right?
Yeah.
Right. Convicted serial killer Edward Edwards, who committed 5 murders between 1977 and 1996, was linked to the Zodiac murders and several other unsolved cases by a former cold case detective, John A. Cameron. Cameron's theories were met with almost universal disdain, especially from law enforcement. Like we're saying again, why would they go from doing it over a 1-year period and then stopping for so long just to go over it for another 20 years? That doesn't seem to fit the kind of pattern that I see anyway.
No.
Or any that we can make out, rather.
I think it all comes down to just people, I'm going to say it, being assholes. Some people like to make places panic, cause havoc, but without actually having to do the crime. So claiming that
plus there's also there's a level of notoriety from claiming to be one of the, which is crazy, right? Again, like it shows like the power this person had. Like he had people claiming to be him.
He essentially had a following.
Yeah. And
he did. Yeah. It wasn't just that. You've got, like I said,
and that's quite a common thing for serial killers, right?
Oh, they always have a following.
Which is always like that's one of the most strange things about it. Like I've read, books on like the Night Stalker and that, and women were
throwing themselves at him.
Well, yeah, but
they were trying to.
Yeah. But obviously he was behind a cage and in jail at the time.
But even when he was in court.
Yeah. It was the same with like the Ted Bundy thing as well, right? Like he had loads of like young women, which is so strange because he was, he was attacking young women. And,
it's that persona they give out, though, isn't it? People feed on it. Some people love it, and it's a scary thought when people are that attracted to a dark side of someone. Yeah. It's a bit like, are you really, a good person inside, or are you just wanting someone to make you bad?
Former we're going back to more
that's fine.
Alleged suspects. Former California Highway Patrol Officer Lyndon Lafferty said that Zodiac Killer was a 91-year-old Solano County, California man he referred to by George Russell Tucker, using a group of retired law enforcement officers called Mandamus 7. Sorry, there's a lot of different pronunciations that I'm having to bring up here. I'm just having to think about them for a split second. Lafferty discovered Tucker and outlined an alleged cover-up for why he was not pursued. Tucker died in February 2012 and was not named because he was not considered a suspect by police. But he's not really offered any kind of evidence as to why he thought this man was the Zodiac Killer. He just said he's 91 and I believe he's the Zodiac Killer.
Yeah.
In February 2014, it was reported that Louis Joseph Myers had confessed to a friend in 2001 that he was the Zodiac Killer after learning that he was dying from cirrhosis of the liver, or psoriasis of the liver. No, psoriasis is the so it must be cirrhosis. Cirrhosis. He requested that of the liver. He requested that his friend Randy Kenny go to the police upon his death. Myers died in 2002, but Kenny allegedly had difficulties getting officers to cooperate and take the claims seriously, which at this point you kind of understand the authorities because they're having so many claims.
All the time.
Yeah. There are several potential connections between Myers and the Zodiac case. Myers attended the same high schools as the victims, David Faraday and Betty Lou Jensen, and allegedly worked in the same restaurant as victim Darlene Ferrin. During the 1971-3 period, when no Zodiac letters were received, Myers was stationed overseas with the military. So this is getting quite interesting, right? Because this has
is
more...
Is it just too much coincidence?
Yeah, but this has legs to it, at least.
It does, yeah. It's got a bit of wiggle room.
Kenny says that Myers confessed he targeted couples because he had a bad breakup with a girlfriend, while officers associated...
Jealousy.
Associated with the case are skeptical. They believe the story is credible, which
it kind of comes across as like a hate crime. It's just not for the normal things you hear about it.
Enough to investigate if Kennedy could produce credible evidence, which there's no more after that. So I guess it just kind of went cold in the end. And obviously the person that that they could talk to try and actually ask about it was deceased.
I'd imagine it. If someone's died, right, and they are actually suspected of being this big time killer, depending on what's wrong with the body, like if they've been cremated or buried, do you think they're allowed to? This is gonna sound crazy, but do you think they're allowed to like dig up the body and take fingerprints and stuff? Like, I don't actually know that.
Probably not. I would imagine the family would contest on being unethical or something like that.
Yeah, it's crazy though, eh?
I suppose there would have to be some kind of special warrant or something given. I don't know how it works, but I would say no, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, because it's just...
No, I would not that I would say I would be against it if it like caught killers and stuff like that. But
exactly. I understand where you're coming from.
Yeah.
From the family's point of perspective, that's a major disrespect right there. Like,
so I'm not saying that it should. I'm just saying that legally I don't think it would happen.
Or do you think maybe they take details like that when they're doing the coroner's reports?
Yeah, no, for sure. Because then they have it on...
then it'll be on file then. But then having all that on file with the DNA that they found on the stamp and there's still no match.
Which maybe suggests that the person might still be alive. Or maybe just deceased. I mean, not everyone gets officially registered as dead, though, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Anyway, especially like... We've got to think 50 years ago, logistics and that were probably...
The way you knew someone was dead is because your neighbour told you.
No, but like I mean, like not everything was recorded as probably as efficiently as it is now.
It's not as if we had databases.
Yeah, exactly.
It was all paper, wasn't it?
So Robert Ivan Nichols is the next one, also known as Joseph Newton Chandler III, was a formerly unidentified identity thief who committed suicide in Eastlake, Ohio in July 2002. After his death, investigators were unable to locate his family and discovered that he had stolen the identity of an 8-year-old boy who was killed in a car crash in Texas in 1945. The lengths of which Nichols went to hide his identity led to speculation that he was a violent fugitive. The U.S. Marshal Service announced his identification at a press conference in Cleveland on June 21st, 2018. Some internet sleuths suggested that he might have been the Zodiac Killer, as he resembled police sketches of the Zodiac Killer and had lived in California where the Zodiac operated. That's very, very flimsy.
Yeah.
And it's just almost immediately we kind of get put off by it when it says the police sketches, which we've already said of...
It's when we hear the same thing that we've already agreed sounds... It's too much of a... That's just going out on a whim.
Yeah.
Going out on a whim.
In 2014, Gary Stewart published a book, The Most Dangerous Animal of All, in which he claimed his search for his biological father, Earl Van Best Jr., led him to conclude Van Best was the Zodiac. These are getting really outlandish now, right?
Because he's linked it to hunting game.
Yeah.
And he's linked it to a book about hunting game. And as you said earlier about that, him saying, I've moved on to bigger game. That's probably exactly what that kid's went, But this is all to go with what I think when people are desperate for that little bit of fame or that little bit of attention.
In 2020, the book was adapted for I would imagine this is the UK version of Fox, or FX might stand for Fox anyway. FX Network is a documentary series. Might have to check that out. We'll see. Since 2018, a journalist a journalistic inquiry on a connection between the Zodiac and Monster of Florence cases is being published on the website of Italian magazine Tempe, also appearing on newspapers Libero, and there's another one that I actually cannot pronounce. Which of the following publication of Amacone's first article? The suspect is a former superintendent of the Florence American Cemetery in Italy. So they're saying that this person might be Italian. The Zodiac Killer might be Italian here, I think, from what I'm reading here. Also known as Giuseppe, was born on December 20th, 1935 in Totowa, New Jersey. Oh, there's obviously quite a lot of Italian heritage in places like New York and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, you get like little Scotland in America as well, don't you? So, yeah.
Had a 20 years career in the army when he left it to move to Florence in 1974, which is when the last letter was sent, right? Francesco Amacone, the author of the inquiry, wrote an account of a pronunciations. Here we go again. Bellivaqua's partial admission, in which he would have confessed to Amacone to the responsibility of the murders attributed to the Zodiac Killer and the Monster of Florence in an unregistered conversation occurred September 11th, 2017. It's always an unregistered conversation, isn't it?
Oh, it's always he said, she said.
After the release of the first part of the inquiry in May 2018, Bevilacqua denied his admission, even though he threatened him with a lawsuit. Amacone did not stop to accuse him. In 2021, Amacone reported that Bevilacqua would have been an undercover CID agent assigned to investigation in San Francisco concerning SMA William O. Wooldridge and other Army sergeants at the time of the Zodiac's homicides in 1969 and 1970. While Army criminal investigator in Italy in the early 1970s, Bevilacqua would have had access to a case file of a double murder occurred near Florence in 1968 where bullets and shell casings had been improperly stored. Bevilacqua replaced the pieces. I can't wait.
Just say B.
Yeah.
Just say B.
I can't wait till this part's over. The pieces of evidence with spent cartridges sought by the gun he would use in the Monster of Florence's homicides in order to link his future crimes to those murders for which he had an alibi. Italian authorities collected B's DNA in late 2020. Again, that still feels a bit far-fetched for me.
Because if they've got the partial print from the back of the stamp in San Francisco in 2002, I think I said it was.
Yeah.
And then they're going to try link it with DNA from 2020. If it's not matching, once again, it can poke holes in what I said, because as the information which I was reading to do with the stamp, it did state it didn't have to actually come from the Zodiac Killer. That stamp could have been reapplied by a postman, someone at the mail office, anyone. You know, I mean, the stamp may have came off, and the person who received the letter might have licked it and stuck it back on. You just don't know. You know, it's one of those things. Obviously, nowadays, I'm not going to lick a stamp that someone's licked. Yeah. But way back then, we didn't have so many worries.
No, we didn't have a pandemic.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So the last suspect, and this is the one that had the most substance to it. So the authorities thought anyway.
Getting to the meaty bit here.
And it's portrayed in the film as well. This person is now deceased. So if he was the killer, then
he got away with it.
Well, you know, in a sense, like he's no longer. Anyway, Robert Graysmith, who is the author of this book, I'll bring up the killers, not the killer, the alleged suspect that had the most substance to name. Book Zodiac advanced Arthur Leigh Allen, who died in 1992, as a potential suspect based on circumstantial evidence. Allen had been interviewed by police from the early days of the Zodiac investigation and was the subject of several search warrants over a 20-year period, which I suppose would kind of fit into the whole I'm superior to the police because I'm literally right under their nose and they still have no idea, and you know they're chasing.
That really fits with the taunting.
Yeah,
definitely.
In 2007, Graysmith noted that several police detectives described Allen as the most likely suspect. In 2010, Toshi stated that all evidence against Allen ultimately turned out to be negative, so that flips it the other way. Toshi's daughter said in 2018 that her father had always thought Allen had been the killer, but they did not have the evidence to prove it. Mark Ruffalo, who portrayed Toshi in the 2007 film Zodiac, expanded on, if you get into who these cops were, you realize how they have to take their hunches and their personal beliefs out of it. Dave Toschi said to me, as soon as that guy walked in the door, I knew it was him. He was sure he had him, but he never had a solid piece of evidence, which, in a way, I know it's kind of going on a hunch, but the killer never left evidence.
Exactly.
So I suppose it would have been someone that you wouldn't have any evidence on in that kind of line of thinking. So you had to keep investigating every other lead. On October 6, 1969, Allen was interviewed by Detective John Lynch of the Vallejo Police Department. Allen had been reported in the vicinity of Lake Berryessa. Attack against Hartnell and Shepherd. On September 27th, 1969, he described himself scuba diving in Salt Point on the day of the attacks. Allen came to the police's attention in 1971 when his friend Donald Cheney reported to police in Manhattan Beach, California, that Allen had spoken of his desire to kill people, use the name Zodiac, and secure a flashlight to a firearm for visibility at night, which kind of connects with a few things there. The flashlight, the Johns case.
Did the police in those days, were they wearing military grade boots? Because obviously it was the boot prints that were found on the lakeside as well.
Were the police wearing them?
Yeah, I can't imagine the police wearing normal black shoes. I'd imagine that they probably were wearing something.
Well, then again, though, you got to think that detectives are probably wearing suits and stuff like that. So maybe not. Well, I guess
it's just something.
It's a good line of inquiry to go down, though, for sure. So he brings up the use of the name Zodiac, which kind of makes me think that they wouldn't have done that because it's quite obvious that it'd be linked in that. But the flashlight one sets like, okay, maybe we're going down the right
kind of road.
Yeah. Jack Mullinax of the Vallejo Police Department subsequently wrote that Allen had received another than honorable discharge from the U.S. Navy in 1958 and had been fired from his job as an elementary school teacher in March. I wonder if he taught teenagers and held bitterness, and that's why it was the young couples that he
focused on.
Yeah.
It might have even been people in his... Well, we don't know. I don't know if any of them went to the class. Yeah, that's a stupid road to go down there. That's
but like, I'm just...
I see where you're coming from. There,
like, you know, some people, like, some of the killers, if they target a specific demographic, there's usually some kind of...
reason for it.
Well, not reason for it, because there's no reason to do what they do, but, like, there's some past experience that they use, like, the blame of it and the reason...
That's their excuse for acting the way they do.
Yeah. In 1968, after allegations of sexual misconduct with students, he was generally well regarded by those who knew him, but he was also described as a fixated on young children and angry at women. And it was always the men that made it out, really, right?
Well, it's from the two survivors. They were both male, yeah.
He apparently never had a girlfriend or wife. In September 1972, San Francisco police obtained a search warrant for Allen's residence. In 1974, Allen was arrested for... sexually assaulting a 12-year-old boy. But then again, though, the killer never seemed to have any kind of... Not from what I've read anyway, any kind
There was nothing sexual about it.
But obviously this guy's a very bad dude, but whether we're just trying to think if he might be related to the Zodiac or is the Zodiac himself or not. He pleaded guilty and served 2 years imprisonment, which is a joke of a sentence for that charge.
It's disgusting.
Vallejo police served another search warrant at Allen's residence in February 1991, 2 days after Allen's death. Although, actually, it's 1974, which I guess would explain the absence of the letters if we're trying to connect like that. But he got out in 76, so who knows? Another warrant for Allen's residence in February 1991. 2 days after Allen's death in 1992, Vallejo police served another warrant and seized property from Allen's residence. Other evidence existed against Allen, albeit entirely circumstantial. A letter sent to the Riverside Police Department from Bates's killer was typed with a Royal typewriter with an Elite type, the same brand found during the 1991 raid of Allen's residence. He owned and wore a Zodiac brand wristwatch. He lived in Vallejo and worked minutes away from where one of the Zodiac victims, it says Farron in brackets here, I think it's Darlene, was it?
Darlene Farron.
Lived, and from where one of the killings took place. In 2002, the San Francisco Police Department developed a partial DNA profile from the saliva on stamps, what we were talking about a couple of minutes ago, and the envelopes of the Zodiac's letters. The San Francisco Police Department compared this partial DNA to the DNA of Arthur Leigh Allen. A DNA comparison was also made with the DNA of Don Cheney, who was Allen's former close friend and the first person to suggest that Allen may be the Zodiac Killer. Since neither test result indicated a match, Allen and Cheney were excluded as the contributors of the DNA. Retired police handwriting expert Lloyd Cunningham, who had worked on the Zodiac case for decades, added, They gave me banana boxes full of Allen's handwriting, and none of his writing even came close to the Zodiac, nor did the DNA extracted from the envelopes or the Zodiac letters come close to Arthur Leigh Allen's. That was quite a in-depth look at a bunch of suspects, but Arthur Leigh Allen was most definitely the one that they never nailed someone down, but if you had like
your number
a
one
chart
suspect
and like a percentage of how likely, he was probably
number
the
one.
highest percent. But at the end, there's still a lot of stuff that kind of rules him out of it as well. And, he is dead now, so
we're never going to know.
We're never going to know that. But that doesn't mean that because it might not be him.
Exactly.
So in 2018, we were talking about the new technology that was to lift the DNA, which we were said that how they called the Golden State Killer and stuff. They were going to use that on Zodiac letters to see if they could come up with anything. And that was meant to take 3 weeks. It has now been 3 years, and there has been no results. So I take it it's not been very successful.
Yeah.
So we've been going for quite a while, my friend.
We have. I actually, because I told you about the strange fact.
Yes, no, of course.
So this is the last bit.
I'm trying to cut things short. I'm trying to censor John over here.
So, yeah, don't censor Big Bad John. So this is a little strange fact for y'all. So next year, we obviously have the new Batman film coming out. And obviously, we've been talking about the Zodiac Killer. And the main enemy in this new Batman film is going to be the Riddler. And from what I've actually read, they are basing this Riddler's character so much on the Zodiac Killer. They are giving him a relatively kind of similar costume with a hood. He's gonna be using symbols, and the Riddler's mostly known for his kind of kooky greeting cards, and obviously for taunting his enemies. And obviously, as we've been discussing this whole chat, the Zodiac's a taunter. He's a come get me.
Yeah,
come get
he likes to
come get me.
people.
Yeah. It's
kind of like the same kind of relationship the Riddler and Batman have, right? Like the Riddler thinks he has a superiority complex to the detective and so on. And so I can kind of see where they're going with it.
There's a little strange fact for the Zodiac Killer. Just a little lighter note on it. Yeah. But obviously, as we've been discussing,
I don't think we can ever go too light on this kind of topic. But
as we've been discussing, what a horrible person this person must have been. I mean, to do what they've done,
or is,
that they may still be alive. We just don't know.
I do have one more question before we go. So I kind of want to get our thoughts on how scary these kind of cases are, and how unique this case is in the sense of no one ever got caught, no one ever got charged, no one ever got prosecuted, and it's never been confirmed that the case has been resolved in either way.
Maybe that's why they think it is someone in like the police force, because obviously
that's what happened with the Golden State Killer, right? But then again, that would just be kind of saying, the Golden State Killer was one, so it must be every murder.
Not everyone needs to get painted with the same brush kind of style.
So how do you feel? Like, I know, like,
I'm worried. I mean,
most of these cases tend to happen in America, but there has been a few over in the UK as well.
Definitely.
How do you like? It almost makes my skin crawl that there's people that could probably still be living a normal
life after what they've
not just that, but like you never know what like you're going to run into, or because like no one's ever been caught. And I suppose that brings up the whole kind of angst and anxiety of the communities and stuff.
That's exactly how I feel. Is anxious.
Yeah.
It is actually anxious is the word for it. It does make you feel anxious. The only saving grace I can think of nowadays is how upgraded we are with technology.
Yeah.
I mean, we have so much more security and CCTV. We've got a lot better technology with DNA, everything like that. You know, we can do a lot nowadays. So yeah, it doesn't change the fact that it is still when you think about it, it is still a very scary thought.
Yeah.
It does set off my anxiety, and I do feel super anxious. We've been talking about it, and I'm like, oh man, it's crazy. People have that mentality. People actually do this, and you are right. They could be the last person you expect.
Like, you know, the police are the best in the world. We've all got our best people on it, but there are some people that can.
Well, there's some people when it's the police themselves.
Yeah, and not just that, can outfox.
Yeah.
The authorities to an extent. Obviously, this is 50 years ago, so times are changing now. But
it is. It's crazy.
There is a possibility that there is a possibility that this person still lives today.
I think.
Do you think that the Zodiac Killer's alive or not?
Well, so his spree started in 1968. We don't really know how old he was. I would imagine. I'm going to state he would have been around about 30. Just round about 30. So what? Say 70. So add another 30, and then add another 20. You'd be what? 50 years old? 80 years old? Nah. I think I would think that he's died.
I think he I think he probably would have got in touch again by now if he was still alive. That's what I'm thinking. Because if you think about it, if he had left it for like 30 years. And then just done it. Imagine because he was always he was trying to outdo himself all the time. When it
he was trying to one up himself.
Yeah, like he was trying to get the hysteria going. And if you think if he had I don't know, seen the film or something and then done it after that, how much of a massive news story that would have been.
Well, that's kind of what I was gonna say. I mean, I would say with all the films that did come out. You know, I mean, why didn't he contact anyone to say that's not what I did? I mean, he apparently wrote that letter with the 340 encryption about the talk show stating, I would not phone you. So, I mean, why wouldn't he, apparently that was him, but why wouldn't he do the same thing for the film if he was still kicking? Why wouldn't he just do it and be like...
Unless he knows about...
Unless he knows he'd be caught nowadays.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying, right? Which would maybe... Because, you know, most killers and criminals, and I don't think like that.
Yeah.
More people that are involved with that line of work probably think like that.
I think people from this era would probably feel like that because they're used to the security measures that are in place for us now. But obviously, someone who was born way back when, it's a big jump, you know? I mean, for example, I go down and see my granda. He's got no idea what to do with a computer. Yeah. He's been on a computer for 10 years. Doesn't mean he knows what he's doing. Yeah. So you can imagine someone from that era coming into this era and being like, right, I need to do what I used to do. How the hell do I do that?
Yeah.
Like, how do I actually do this?
No, I agree with you, though. I don't think he's alive today.
No, I think he's popped off.
Yeah, I think...
he or she has popped off.
I think there would have been some kind of communication by now if they were still alive. Although I don't think it's Arthur Leigh Allen. Arthur Leigh Allen seems like a horrible person from what we just read there, but I don't think it was him if I looked at all the evidence and that. But I guess we'll never know.
Well, we'll never know, unfortunately. One of those unsolved.
And that is very, very scary, knowing that there is those rare incidents and unique cases like this where stuff like that happens.
Where, unfortunately, the bad person essentially wins.
Yeah.
They get away with it.
I wouldn't... Yeah.
They've achieved what they wanted, didn't get caught.
Or, you know... Not to end on a sad note or anything.
No,
like
I know it is sad, but unfortunately, this is what we're here to speak truth, not facts. Sorry, folks.
Yeah, inside joke, but right. Well, we've been going for an hour and 33 minutes. I guess it's time to wrap it up.
Yeah.
I don't know when this episode is going to get released. I think we're going to release it when we're filming the intro that we're going to do for the podcast later down the line. We'll hope that you've enjoyed. I was going to say enjoy, but it would make no sense because this is coming out after them. We hope you've enjoyed episode 10, which you'll see when it's out, and the episode of Musicians for Murder Part 3 with Chris Grant. And I guess we'll see you for episode 13.
Yeah, we'll see you next time, folks. Episode 13. Peace out from the NEC.
This podcast is also available on Google Podcasts, Breaker, Pocketcasts, RadioPublic, and Spotify.